as the superfluous arena of political discourse, where the ideological gladiators clash with rhetorical vigor. Destiny, a digital philosopher of modern times, finds himself embroiled in a peculiar inquisition, a probing question that seeks to expose an alleged hypocrisy in his progressive convictions.
This must be why you're a progressive who wants higher taxes but wants to live in a low-tax state. I don't think I've ever in my life said I want higher taxes. Ever. I don't think I've ever said that. I don't know if I've ever made that prescription or claimed that's a thing that I desire, ever, in anything I've ever said in the last 5 years. Stare, you don't want higher spending. If there are programs that I like, then yeah, you can have higher spending. And you need sometimes more taxes to pay for it. But that's not the same as saying that you want higher taxes, right? I feel like you're doing the connector thing in your mind without realizing it. If somebody's like, oh, there's a PR that I'm really trying to, or a PB I'm really trying to push past. I really want to be able to bench or squat or whatever. Would you look at that person and go ooh, you want to spend more time in the gym? Ugh, you want to go to the gym that much more? It's well, no, not really. But that's the thing that you have to do to effect the other thing at the end. Here's the timestamp for the hearing. What a argument. You do want higher taxes, not for the sake of higher taxes, but in effect you do. I guess. I don't know if you can transfer desires like that. So for instance, let's say that a person has cancer and they need to do chemotherapy. Would you say that that person wants to be sick and nauseous all the time? What?
5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Administrator Regan, is it true that the EPA has never obtained formal authorization legislation from Congress?
I'm sorry?
Is it true that the EPA has never obtained formal legislation, authorization legislation from Congress?
I feel like the spending is already implied. Obviously, no one just wants taxes for their own sake. I disagree. I think when progressives and shit talk about taxation, from the way that I hear it, and I could be wrong, but it sounds like to them, taxes are a punishment to be levied upon billionaires and the wealthy to punish them for their wealth. That's what it sounds like to me. When I hear about progressives talk about taxes, I usually hear it in terms you need to pay your fair share, or the American public team, you need to give back to the American public. It comes from this very scolding, accusatory perspective. That's what it feels like to me. And then when conservatives talk about taxes, yeah, they talk about taxes as a punishment. Why does the government steal my money? Why do I have to work for the government 2 days a week and blah, 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 blah. People seem to talk about taxes as though they're an end to themselves, maybe because of the disconnect we have between the taxes and the government income and the government outlays because we borrow so much, but come on, bro. They're usually saying that so they can fund universal Medicare and like that. I very, very rarely, if ever, have heard a progressive connect taxation to hypothetical programs. I just don't hear that speak very much. And they seem to demonize wealthy people a lot. I can't believe we disagree on this, but I mean, hey, maybe that's just my perception. I could be wrong, I guess. Actually, when Bernie Sanders ran, I think Bernie Sanders did a good job at connecting the two. I remember Bernie Sanders actually had a graph for, what am I thinking? In one of his campaign things, he had a graph for a proposed program and then a tax that he wanted to tie it to. I'm not going to be able to find it. Bernie Sanders, I think, probably did a good job for the messaging on this. But the vast majority of the time I hear progressives or Democrats talk about taxes, it usually just comes off as a demonization of wealthy people.
The query, posed by a member of his virtual audience, cuts to the heart of the matter. How can one profess progressive values, which often entail a desire for higher taxes to fund social programs, while simultaneously choosing to reside in states that boast lower income taxes? It is a question that, on the surface, appears to suggest a fundamental contradiction, but under the scalpel of Destiny's meticulous analysis, it reveals itself to be a misinterpretation of both his personal ideology and the broader principles of progressive thought. The question assumes, first and foremost, that the desire for higher taxes is an intrinsic part of progressive ideology, that to be a progressive is to necessarily advocate for increased taxation as an end in itself. Yet, Destiny, in his characteristic Socratic fashion, dismantles this assumption with the precision of a seasoned rhetorician. For Destiny, the issue is not one of desiring higher taxes for their own sake, but rather the recognition that certain social programs, which he supports, may require increased funding. This funding, in turn, may necessitate higher taxes. However, to equate the means with the ends is a categorical error, one that conflates the desire for specific outcomes with the incidental mechanisms required to achieve them. In the labyrinth of fiscal policy, taxes are but one tool among many, an instrument to be wielded judiciously, not an idol to be worshipped. Destiny's perspective is rooted in pragmatism rather than dogmatism. He does not advocate for higher taxes as a moral imperative, but as a practical necessity in the context of specific policies. To suggest that his progressive stance implies a blanket endorsement of higher taxes across the board is to misunderstand the nuanced relationship between means and ends in the realm of political economy. Furthermore, Destiny draws a sharp distinction between the moralizing rhetoric often associated with progressive tax policy and his own more measured approach. While it is true that some progressives may speak of taxation as a form of retributive justice, an instrument to redress the inequalities perpetuated by the wealthy, Destiny views this as a distortion of the true purpose of taxation. For him, taxes should be understood not as a punitive measure, but as a necessary contribution to the collective good, calibrated to fund the programs that enhance societal welfare. The conflation of progressive values with a punitive approach to taxation, Destiny argues, is a mischaracterization often perpetuated by both critics and overzealous advocates. This mischaracterization fuels the perception that progressives harbor an intrinsic animosity toward wealth, rather than a commitment to ensuring that wealth contributes to the common good. It is this misperception that the questioner, perhaps unwittingly, taps into, a perception that Destiny is quick to dispel. In addressing the apparent contradiction between his progressive values and his choice of residence, Destiny invokes the principle of practical consistency. His decision to live in a low-tax state is not an abdication of his progressive ideals, but a reflection of the complex interplay between personal circumstances and broader ideological commitments. Just as one might advocate for public transportation while owning a car due to the inadequacies of the local transit system, so too might one support higher taxes in theory while seeking to optimize their own financial situation within the existing tax framework. Destiny's argument is not an evasion of the issue, but a recognition of the multifaceted nature of human decision-making. To expect ideological purity in every aspect of life is to ignore the practical realities that govern our choices. The progressive ideal is not about self-flagellation or martyrdom, but about advocating for policies that enhance the collective welfare, even if that advocacy must sometimes coexist with personal decisions that reflect the current state of affairs rather than an idealized future. Moreover, Destiny challenges the notion that one's personal tax contributions are the ultimate litmus test of progressive commitment. The impact of one's advocacy, voting behavior, and public discourse far outweighs the marginal difference in tax payments that might result from living in one state versus another. To reduce the entirety of one's political engagement to the question of tax residency is to trivialize the broader spectrum of civic responsibility. In this vein, Destiny points out that his platform and influence are leveraged in ways that likely contribute far more to the causes he supports than any incremental increase in taxes would. His ability to shape public opinion, mobilize voters, and advocate for policies that align with progressive values is a form of contribution that transcends the simplistic calculus of personal tax payments. It is a reminder that the fight for social justice is waged on multiple fronts, and that financial contributions, while important, are but one aspect of a larger, more complex struggle. In the final analysis, Destiny's response to the accusation of hypocrisy is a masterclass in the art of rhetorical defense. He deftly navigates the treacherous waters of ideological purity, demonstrating that true progressivism is not about rigid adherence to a set of rules, but about the thoughtful application of principles in a way that maximizes their impact. His argument is a reminder that the path to social justice is not a straight line, but a winding road that requires both conviction and pragmatism. Thus, in the grand arena of digital debate, Destiny emerges not as a hypocrite, but as a realist, a thinker who understands that the pursuit of progressive ideals must be tempered by the realities of the world in which we live. His commitment to those ideals remains unwavering, even as he navigates the practicalities of his own life. In doing so, he offers a powerful rebuttal to those who would seek to reduce the complexity of political engagement to a simple matter of dollars and cents.